If you were around in 1988, there's a good chance you already have an opinion about Robin Givens, and there's an even better chance it's the wrong one. She married Mike Tyson, the most feared heavyweight champion on the planet, and 7 months later, she sat down beside him on national television and used the word torture to describe her own marriage. The country's verdict was that she was lying, a gold digger humiliating a champion for the cameras. Here's what almost nobody remembers about what happened next. Within a year, Mike Tyson's own words about that same day ended up in print, and they should have ended the argument for good. We'll get to his exact words, because they're almost impossible to hear the first time. At 61, Robin Givens is still working, still respected, and it turns out she was telling the truth in 1988. It just took the rest of us 38 years to catch up to her. Before any of that, Robin Givens was the success story, not the scandal. She was born in the Bronx in November of 1964. She enrolled at Sarah Lawrence College, not the kind of school known for turning out tabloid regulars. While most of her classmates were still finishing high school, graduated around the age of 19, and was, by every account, on the kind of track that had people around her talking about medical school. Acting pulled her sideways instead. By 1987, she was starring in the sitcom Head of the Class, playing the smartest girl in a room full of gifted teenagers, which for her wasn't much of a stretch. It was the kind of role that put her picture on magazine covers next to headlines that had nothing to do with acting talent, the start of a decade where the tabloids would decide who Robin Givens was faster than she ever could. If you had a television in the 80s, there's a good chance you knew her face long before you ever heard Mike Tyson's name attached to it. Tyson, meanwhile, was already one of the most feared men in sports. He'd become heavyweight champion of the world at 20 years old, the youngest heavyweight champion in history, undefeated, a fighter opponents were genuinely afraid to get in the ring with. By the time Robin Givens met him, the boxing world had already started calling him the baddest man on the planet, and he was earning millions of dollars a fight. The two of them met, and everything moved fast. Really fast. They'd known each other a matter of months when they married on February 7th, 1988, in a private ceremony that reportedly caught even people close to them off guard. Robin Givens was 23 years old, married to the most famous fighter alive, and about to become, within the year, the most hated woman in America. None of that explains what came next on its own, except for one thing. It explains why almost nobody was ready to hear what Robin Givens was about to say. The country had already decided who Mike Tyson was, a fighter who had clawed his way from nothing to the top of the world. The country had already decided who Robin Givens was too. Poised, well-spoken, seen by a lot of people watching at home as a woman who had married beneath her. When the marriage started to unravel in public, plenty of people had already made up their minds about which one of them was the real problem, and it wasn't the heavyweight champion. 7 months into that marriage, she agreed to something that would define the rest of her life, and it happened on one of the biggest stages television had to offer. In the fall of 1988, Robin Givens sat down with Barbara Walters for an episode of 2020, ABC's Friday Night News magazine. Barbara Walters was, by then, one of the most trusted interviewers in the country. The person public figures sat across from when they needed to be taken seriously. Walking onto that set meant putting her own account on the record permanently, in front of the biggest audience of her life. This was long before anyone could stream an interview or clip it themselves. If a story like this one was going to reach the country, it happened on one night, on one network, and you either caught it live or heard about it secondhand for the rest of your life. It became one of the most watched celebrity interviews of its time. Mike Tyson sat right beside her for the entire hour. Picture that chair for a second. Not the marriage, just the chair. A 23-year-old woman, 7 months into a union that was already hurting her, sitting close enough to touch the most feared man in the country, being asked on camera to describe what her life actually looked like behind closed doors, while he sat there and listened to every word of it. Nobody would have blamed her for saying nothing. She answered anyway. Her exact words preserved by Newsweek. Quote, "Torture, pure hell, worse than anything I could possibly imagine," she described his temper. Quote, "He's got a side to him that's scary." And then the words that still stop people cold decades later. Quote, "He shakes, he pushes, he swings. Sometimes I think he's trying to scare me." She reached for the phrase manic depressive to try to explain the swings in his mood, her own word, not a diagnosis, just a 23-year-old grabbing for language to describe something she didn't have the right words for yet, because almost nobody did in 1988. Mike Tyson sat beside her through nearly all of it and said almost nothing. What she described on that broadcast has a name today: coercive control, escalating fear inside a marriage, the kind advocates now spend entire careers teaching people to recognize early. It was much easier to name from the outside, decades later, than from inside a marriage in 1988. There was just a young wife saying something upsetting next to a famous husband, and a country that had to decide, live in real time, who to believe. Here is where you'd expect the country to rally around her. It did the opposite. There was no social media in 1988, no way for Robin Givens to post her own version of events and reach the same people the talk shows and the tabloids reached. Once the coverage decided what kind of story this was, that decision mostly stood uncontested for years. A CNN poll taken while the divorce played out found that 93% of respondents blamed Robin Givens for the marriage falling apart, not Mike Tyson. Newspapers started calling her the most hated woman in America. In print, as a headline, not an exaggeration for effect. The word everyone reached for was gold digger, a young actress who'd married a champion for his money and then humiliated him on national television for sympathy. She filed for divorce that October. It was finalized on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1989, just over a year after the wedding. Tyson responded by suing her for $125 million, claiming she'd defamed him. That's not the number attached to an ordinary disagreement between two people going their separate ways. That's the number of someone trying to make an example of her. Imagine going to the grocery store or turning on your own television and finding strangers had already decided you were a liar based on one interview about your own marriage. That was Robin Givens' actual daily life for the rest of that year. Not a headline she could shut off, something she had to carry into every room she walked into. A woman describes being frightened in her own home, on television, with the man she's describing sitting next to her, saying nothing to contradict her, and the public's answer is a lawsuit and a nickname that followed her for decades. And if the story stopped there, it would just be another sad footnote in boxing history. It doesn't stop there because within a year, Mike Tyson opened his mouth about what actually happened inside that apartment. And this time, nobody was asking him to deny anything. In the 12 months after the divorce, Mike Tyson's career didn't miss a step. He kept fighting, kept winning, kept making millions of dollars a fight, and the boxing world kept calling him the baddest man on the planet. Robin Givens spent that same year being introduced on talk shows as the woman who'd nearly destroyed a champion. Same 12 months, nobody watching from the outside would have called it an equal year. In 1989, the former light heavyweight champion Jose Torres published a biography called Fire and Fear, the inside story of Mike Tyson. Torres wasn't a tabloid reporter looking for a quick headline. He was a former champion himself, someone from inside Mike Tyson's own world, which is exactly why the book carried weight. Playboy ran an excerpt that August, which meant this was not some rumor passed around secondhand. It was in print, quoting Mike Tyson directly. Buried inside, it was Tyson, in his own words, describing a fight with Robin Givens in an apartment. His reported words, quote, "She flew backward, hitting every wall in the apartment. That was the best punch I've ever thrown in my life." Read that again. During the divorce, under oath, Mike Tyson had denied ever hurting her. Within that same year, in a published book, he was quoted describing the exact thing he had denied and calling it the best punch of his career. He denied it in a courtroom. He bragged about it on paper. Robin Givens never had to prove one word of what she said in 1988. By his own account, he proved it for her. And by the sound of it, he was almost proud of it. A major magazine had just published the heavyweight champion of the world, describing in his own words, hitting his wife hard enough to send her into a wall and calling it his best punch. It did not become the biggest story in the country. It became a passage inside a book, read and mostly forgotten, while Robin Givens kept carrying the reputation the divorce had already given her. Even that wasn't enough to change the country's mind right away. Less than 4 years after Robin Givens called her husband dangerous on national television, on February 10, 1992, Mike Tyson was convicted of raping an 18-year-old named Desiree Washington. He served about 3 years in prison. This isn't the place to relitigate that case in detail. It belongs to Desiree Washington, not to this one. But it's fair, and it's the entire reason this story is worth telling, to notice what that conviction means for the woman the public spent 1988 calling a liar. The man Robin Givens said scared her, the man America defended against her on national television, the man who'd bragged in print about the punch that put her into a wall, was a convicted rapist within 4 years of that interview. She hadn't been describing a misunderstanding between two young newlyweds. She'd been describing a pattern. Boxing writers spent that next decade picking apart Mike Tyson's decline in the ring. Almost nobody spent it revisiting what he'd said about the punch or what she'd said 4 years earlier. The 1992 conviction reshaped Mike Tyson's public reputation for good. Robin Givens spent those same years still wearing the reputation the divorce had given her in 1988. You might expect that at some point, decades later, Mike Tyson corrected the record. He never did. In his 2013 memoir, Undisputed Truth, he went after Robin Givens again, calling her a gold digger and claiming she'd faked a pregnancy during their marriage. 25 years had passed since that interview, more than enough time for anyone to reconsider a position. And Mike Tyson used that much distance to attack her credibility one more time instead. Givens has said the book left her, in her own words, deeply disturbed. No apology ever arrived. Not in 2013, not since. Whatever vindication Robin Givens was going to get out of this story, it was never coming from him. It came from the rest of us instead, and it took a long time to get here. Sometime around 2017, a movement usually called Me Too took hold, first among women in entertainment and then far beyond it, where survivors of powerful men started speaking publicly in numbers too large to dismiss, and for the first time in a lot of their lives, the public actually listened. In 2018, in the middle of all of that, Robin Givens sat down on the Wendy Williams show and talked about being told she was ground zero, one of the earliest, most public examples of exactly this pattern, 3 decades before there was even a name for it. Her words, quote, "I pray that anything I've gone through, however difficult it was for me, helped somebody else." She didn't use that appearance to demand an apology. She had already spent years working with the National Domestic Violence Hotline, the number survivors actually call, day or night when they need someone to take them seriously immediately. No poll required. Robin Givens gave years of her own time and her own story to that work, trying to make sure the next 23-year-old got heard faster than she had been. Nobody ever handed her a public apology. Nobody reran that CNN poll to see if the country would answer differently. Now, what she got instead was quieter than that, and in its own way, harder to sit with. The culture came around, slowly, over decades, to the exact place Robin Givens had already been standing in that chair in 1988. Robin Givens was 23 when she told the truth on that stage. She was in her 50s by the time large parts of the country were finally willing to say she had been right. That gap isn't an abstract number sitting on a page somewhere. That is most of a working life, and arriving that late couldn't hand her back a single year of it. You could actually watch that shift happen in real time, decades after it should have. On November 15th, 2024, Mike Tyson stepped back into a ring at 58 years old for a fight against Jake Paul, a YouTuber turned boxer who'd built an entire following making videos for an audience that wasn't even born in 1988. It aired on Netflix and was one of the most streamed live events in the platform's history, reaching homes that had never once heard of a show called 2020. Sports commentators spent weeks asking whether a 58-year-old man had any business getting into a ring at all. Almost nobody was asking, the way the country once had, whether Robin Givens had been telling the truth. And then a lot of people started asking anyway. They found the old interview. They found Robin Givens 7 months into her marriage, telling the truth with her husband right beside her. And this time, watching the same footage the country saw in 1988, they believed her. And there was a bitter symmetry to it. Mike Tyson had spent those decades being slowly rebuilt into a beloved figure, a movie cameo here, a podcast there, cheered back into the ring by millions who now mostly remembered him fondly. Robin Givens got no comeback tour. She got something quieter and harder to celebrate, a late, unofficial admission from the culture that she had been right the whole time. Notice what Robin Givens did not do with any of this. She did not spend the following decades doing revenge interviews about Mike Tyson, and she never built a media career out of being his ex-wife. She chose exactly when to speak about it, and to whom, on her own terms instead of the tabloids. She kept acting, kept working, and mostly saved her public voice for other survivors, the ones who needed to hear from somebody who had actually lived through it. And this year, at 61, Robin Givens is still working. In July, she was cast in season 3 of Cross, a crime drama on Prime Video built around the detective Alex Cross, decades into a career the country once tried to end with a poll and a lawsuit. The 93% isn't the headline anymore. The chair is. So here's the verdict, and it belongs to you, not to us. If you were watching in 1988, did you believe Robin Givens then? Watching it now, Do you believe her today? Subscribe for the next story about a woman the public convicted before the facts came in. And if you want another woman blamed for a marriage she didn't break, our Meg Ryan video is on your screen right now. Robin Givens told the truth once, at 23, with the man she was describing sitting right beside her. The rest of us just needed 38 years to hear it.